She wasn't any one thing. She was a person who had lived a lot of life, who had a lot of life experience.
What if I told you Hollywood's biggest celebrity counterattack just exploded in the worst possible way, backfiring right in Blake Lively's face? What if the $400 million lawsuit meant to silence the critics has instead handed Justin Baldoni the ultimate revenge card? This isn't just legal collapse, it's total narrative annihilation. Alexan, welcome to Alexan Trend, the home of bold truths, breaking stories, and the kind of celebrity drama no one else dares to uncover. Today we pull back the velvet curtain on one of the most explosive courtroom twists in Hollywood history. Blake Lively, once seen as the poised and untouchable Hollywood elite, launched a $400 million counterattack against Justin Baldoni in what many believed was a masterclass in reclaiming control, but that power move has officially blown up. Her case is dismissed, the legal strategy she bet her image on has failed, and now the same courtroom she tried to weaponize is turning into a stage for Baldoni's revenge. We're going deeper than the tabloids, we're exposing the truth behind the headlines. Don't blink. What began as a bold power play has now transformed into a devastating miscalculation. When Blake Lively filed her staggering $400 million countersuit against Justin Baldoni, it was more than just a legal move, it was a statement she wasn't going to sit back. While Baldoni's team painted her as manipulative and misleading, but the moment the judge dismissed her countersuit, that statement was shattered. The dismissal wasn't just a legal blow, it was a reputational earthquake. Blake's entire narrative, one carefully crafted to portray her as the victim of a calculated smear campaign, has been upended. Her legal team, once confident and aggressive, now finds itself scrambling for damage control because the court didn't just shut down her lawsuit, it pulled the rug out from under her credibility. Baldoni's legal team wasted no time, unleashing the full force of their strategy the moment Blake Lively's $400 million countersuit was thrown out. What once appeared to be a reactive defensive posture from his side instantly transformed into an unapologetic full-scale legal assault that caught Blake's camp off guard. They didn't just push back, they detonated. Within hours of the court's dismissal, Baldoni's lawyers filed new motions, accusing Blake's team of trying to cloak the case in secrecy. They argued that Blake had deliberately maneuvered to avoid public scrutiny, citing her repeated requests for private hearings, sealed documents, and a closed-door deposition strategy. And while those moves might have once been seen as protecting a high-profile figure from media frenzy, Baldoni's team flipped the narrative with surgical precision. Suddenly, Blake wasn't shielding herself from exploitation, she was dodging accountability. The court of public opinion was now being weaponized, and Baldoni's camp knew exactly how to aim. But what truly raised eyebrows across Hollywood and legal circles alike were the internal documents that began to surface: emails, calendar drafts, and confidential strategy notes that hinted Baldoni's team had expected this exact scenario. They didn't just respond to the dismissal, they planned for it for months. Every move Blake's legal team made, they had a counter-move ready. It wasn't just a legal battle anymore, it was a chessboard, and Blake had walked right into a corner trap. But the drama didn't stop at motions and counter-motions. Baldoni's side went straight to the media, leaking statements to trusted outlets and letting anonymous sources feed the press with headlines that painted Blake as evasive, manipulative, and increasingly desperate. The narrative was no longer controlled by legal documents, it was being shaped by perception, by headlines, by optics. And in this war, truth wasn't enough. Dominance over public opinion was the real prize. They pushed for open depositions, calling for cameras in the room, knowing full well the psychological pressure that public testimony would place on a figure like Blake, whose brand was built on image control and elegance under pressure. By turning her request for privacy into a claim of secrecy, they'd built a perfect storm. And Blake, she was suddenly alone in a corner, not just by a judge but by a world increasingly addicted to watching celebrities fall apart in real time in a culture that confuses exposure with honesty and privacy with guilt. Baldoni's strategy struck a dangerous nerve. His team painted themselves as champions of transparency, demanding that everything, every word, every reaction, every contradiction be laid bare for the world to see. But the truth? This wasn't about justice, it was spectacle disguised as principle. It was a legal ambush, wrapped in the language of integrity, and it worked. News cycles spun into overdrive. Social media exploded with speculation. Suddenly Blake's silence was interpreted as guilt, her legal strategy as manipulation, and her desire for dignity as cowardice. Her every move was dissected by influencers, gossip blogs, and self-proclaimed legal experts. The pressure became suffocating, and here's where the loop traps Blake most cruelly. If she agrees to a public deposition, she risks emotional collapse on camera, a moment that could be captured, clipped, and turned into viral content that would haunt her forever. But if she refuses, the narrative of She has something to hide only grows louder heads they win tails she loses the very spectacle her team tried to avoid was now being forced upon her as a moral obligation in a court of law. She was a witness but in the court of public opinion. She was the main act in a trial of emotion optics and humiliation and Baldoni's team, they weren't just legal opponents anymore, they were producers crafting a narrative directing the spotlight and waiting for the moment when Blake's carefully guarded composure finally breaks on the biggest stage of all. This is no longer legal warfare, this is reputational execution, and the audience is already watching behind the glossy red carpets and curated Instagram posts. The emotional toll of this legal war was beginning to manifest in ways even Blake Lively's tight-knit inner circle couldn't fully shield her from, as the court's rejection of her $400 million countersuit echoed through headlines and legal blogs. It wasn't just a strategic defeat, it was a catastrophic loss of leverage, reputation, and control. Insiders close to Blake say she was blindsided by the speed and precision of Baldoni's counterattack. Her team had gambled everything on reframing the story, positioning Blake not as a cornered celebrity, but as a woman standing up against manipulation, exploitation, and public vilification. But that narrative collapsed under the weight of the dismissal. What was once a confident charge forward now looked too many like a desperate attempt to weaponize the legal system for sympathy, and Baldoni's side wasted no time using that perception as fueled a media machine. Turned instantly, television analysts, podcast hosts, and TikTok legal experts began framing Blake as the architect of her own unraveling, a star so obsessed with image control that she thought she could intimidate the court into siding with her. The backlash wasn't confined to tabloids. Even respected commentators began questioning whether the entire countersuit had been a calculated PR stunt to gain moral high ground amid crumbling claims for Blake, who had spent years carefully crafting a public identity as both sophisticated and sincere. The reputational damage struck at her core, because in Hollywood, fame doesn't die in scandal, it dies in disbelief. And once the audience stops believing your pain, your version of the truth becomes white noise in a sea of spectacle. But it wasn't just the media storm that was unraveling her. According to sources, Blake's legal team is now scrambling to prevent even deeper exposure. With the countersuit dismissed, her leverage to demand confidentiality has disintegrated. Baldoni's attorneys have already moved to subpoena personal communications, deposition recordings, and even internal messages exchanged between Blake and unnamed celebrity allies, sources that could explode into a new layer of public humiliation if released. One court document reportedly hints at a sealed folder titled High-Profile Witness Threads, raising speculation about who else might be dragged into the spotlight. Could Blake's inner circle, perhaps even A-listers known to support her publicly, be pulled into the testimony vortex? If that happens, the story won't just be about Blake anymore, it'll be about the system of protection and silence surrounding her, and that's where the emotional devastation deepens, because this isn't just about legal defeat, it's about social exile. When a star loses control of their narrative in Hollywood, they don't just lose fans. They lose endorsements, contracts, and trust. Blake's team reportedly held emergency strategy sessions following the dismissal, fearing that public sentiment was turning so quickly, so aggressively, that she might not recover her standing. This wasn't just another scandal. This was a career-altering shift. Baldoni's legal strategy hadn't just undermined her claims, it had framed her as the aggressor, the manipulator, the one with something to hide. And in an age of digital witch hunts and cancel culture pile-ons, perception moves faster than the truth ever can. But the most brutal twist in this unraveling saga is how personal it has become. This isn't just about lawyers in a courtroom, this is about a woman watching her legacy, her brand, and her emotional truth being stripped away piece by piece in real time. Every failed motion, every leaked detail, every silence twisted into suspicion. It's a slow public unraveling. And the worst part? She's still expected to smile through it. The Hollywood machine doesn't stop for pain, it repackages, it markets it, and demands more. And now Blake finds herself trapped in a loop where the more she protects herself, the more guilty she appears, the more she defends, the more performative she's accused of being. Her silence is seen as strategy, and her voice, if shaky or uncertain, could become her undoing. She's not just cornered legally, she's emotionally ambushed with no exit. That doesn't cost her something she can never get back, and the vultures, they're already circling, because nothing goes more viral than a celebrity implosion, especially when it's one we never expected. And just when it seemed like Blake Lively had reached the lowest point of this legal spiral, the narrative took an even darker, more invasive turn, one that not only threatened her reputation, but her fundamental sense of safety in an industry that thrives on spectacle. With the $400 million countersuit dismissed, and her legal options narrowing by the day, Blake's defense team is no longer just trying to win, they're trying to survive. The battlefield has shifted. It's no longer about legal facts or court proceedings. It's about emotional leverage, public manipulation, and Heather Blake's next move will restore her credibility or bury it forever. Baldoni's lawyers, emboldened by their momentum, have reportedly escalated demands in private hearings, pushing for unfiltered access to previously sealed communications, raw deposition materials, and digital records that include not only Blake's messages but also references to high-profile industry names, powerful studio heads, and even one A-list figure whose involvement could implode into a completely separate scandal if revealed behind closed doors. Legal observers say Blake's camp is fighting tooth and nail to keep those records buried, not because they confirm wrongdoing, but because in the current media climate, even perception can be a death sentence. A misinterpreted text, a sarcastic emoji, a comment taken out of context, that's all it takes to ignite a viral frenzy, and Baldoni's team knows it. That's why they're pushing for court transparency, not out of moral obligation, but because they understand something brutal and primal about today's audience. We no longer wait for verdicts, we react to shock. They're not looking to win with evidence. They want to win with exposure, with headlines, with public opinion weaponized against a woman already struggling to hold onto her version of the truth. And as this game of reputational chess plays out, Blake isn't just losing pawns, she's losing queens. One by one, former allies are distancing themselves, fearful of being dragged into the storm, cautious about aligning with a narrative that might shift again tomorrow. Because in Hollywood, loyalty is a currency that evaporates the second the public turns. And now the conversation around Blake has begun to change in a sinister way. It's no longer just, what did she know, or was her countersuit justified? Now people are whispering, what is she hiding? It's a chilling shift from doubt to suspicion to near certainty, all based not on proven fact, but on strategic silence and digital rumor. Every move she doesn't make is interpreted as guilt. Every legal delay is seen as cover-up, and that's the trap. Because no matter how transparent Blake tries to be now, the audience doesn't want transparency. They want blood. The court of public opinion has transformed into a gladiatorial arena, and she's been cast as the villain in a drama she thought she was writing. This is no longer about winning or losing, it's about survival in an industry that watches women rise just to revel in watching them fall. And Blake is realizing that the higher the pedestal, the harder the collapse. But perhaps the most heartbreaking element of this collapse is how deeply personal it has become. This isn't just a celebrity being sued. This is a mother, a wife, a daughter watching as her privacy is picked apart, her integrity questioned, her life redefined by a script she didn't write. Paparazzi have reportedly increased surveillance outside her home. Her children's names are being mentioned in speculative online threads. Close friends have gone radio silent. Projects have stalled, and through it all, Blake is being expected to maintain poise, grace, and a professional image, all while legal predators circle and former fans sharpen their claws. The emotional toll is devastating. People don't see the panic attacks, they don't see the sleepless nights, the late-night crisis calls to publicists, the hours spent with legal teams combing through texts that might become tomorrow's headline. All they see is a woman once celebrated, now isolated, now judged, now diminished. And the irony? All of this began as an attempt to reclaim her power. The $400 million countersuit was never just about money, it was about rewriting the narrative before it crushed her. But now that same move has unraveled into a cautionary tale. A reminder that in the age of viral litigation, fighting back publicly can be more dangerous than staying silent, because once the story spirals out of your control, it no longer matters what's true, it only matters what people believe. And right now, too many believe that Blake Lively's fall isn't just inevitable, it's deserved. Whether that belief is right or wrong has become irrelevant, because in this version of the story, Blake isn't telling it anymore, she's living it, and it's one heartbreak at a time. But what makes this final chapter of Blake Lively's legal saga the most devastating isn't just the courtroom losses or media humiliation. It's the haunting realization that the war was never meant to be fair. As Blake watches this case spin into a circus she can no longer control, what remains is a chilling blueprint of how reputations are crushed in the digital age, not by truth, but by timing, optics, and an audience addicted to scandal. Baldoni's team, masterful in their maneuvering, understood something Blake's side fatally underestimated. In Hollywood, legal battles aren't just fought in courtrooms, they're fought on timelines and trending tabs. And in the court of mass perception, they didn't just dismantle her countersuit, they dismantled the myth that she was untouchable. And with every leak, every motion, every whisper about what Blake may be hiding, they've constructed a narrative so powerful it threatens to become her legacy, not the legacy she built with years of work, not the one filled with films, awards, and carefully curated interviews, but a legacy written in depositions, court filings, and viral commentary that she never authorized. Because now Blake isn't just dealing with legal pressure, she's navigating a total collapse of public control. Social media, once a platform she used to build empathy and connection, has turned into a relentless judgmental echo chamber. Every new comment section becomes a courtroom, every Reddit thread a mini trial, and worst of all, every silence she maintains is branded as guilt. She's trapped in a paradox. If she defends herself publicly, she's accused of playing the victim. If she stays quiet, she's accused of hiding the truth. It's a lose-lose game played on a massive scale, and as that pressure mounts, reports say insiders are growing concerned not just for her image, but for her emotional stability. The psychological toll of becoming a symbol for public deception, when you believe yourself to be the one betrayed, is devastating. She's now seen not as a person but as content, a headline, a thumbnail, a soundbite ready to be dissected, judged, and forgotten. What's more terrifying is that this isn't just Blake's battle anymore. It's a warning shot for every public figure who thinks they can outmaneuver a media machine with old-school legal tactics. Blake Lively, a woman who once embodied elegance, poise, and control, has become the face of how quickly that image can be obliterated the moment someone with power and timing decides to flip the narrative. Baldoni's team didn't just beat her in court. They turned her strategy against her. The countersuit that was supposed to frame her as the wrong party is now being weaponized to make her look manipulative, vengeful, and dishonest. Her refusal to allow public spectacle is being framed as secrecy. Her attempts to protect her family are being twisted into a refusal to cooperate. Even the legal motions she filed, standard practice in any lawsuit, are being portrayed as smokescreens, distractions, and guilty deflections. And the scariest part? It's working now. The media has its teeth in her. Outlets that once celebrated her now publish think pieces about celebrity privilege and strategic victimhood. Even some of her fans are turning, caught in the algorithmic whirlwind of click-driven skepticism. The powerful studio executives who once defended her, silent fellow celebrities, watching cautiously from a distance. The industry has moved into survival mode, and Blake, once its darling, is now a liability, too dangerous to embrace and too messy to defend. All it takes is one more leak, one more misstep, and the image she's spent her career building will be beyond repair. And in this blood sport version of justice, no apology, no clarification, and no verdict will ever be enough to erase what's already been seen, said, and believed. And so Blake Lively now stands at the edge of something far more destructive than a lawsuit. She stands at the edge of complete narrative erasure, her voice drowned by headlines, her side of the story replaced by viral fragments she can't control, her truth lost in a sea of commentary that doesn't care who's right, only who's entertaining. This is no longer about law, it's about domination. It's about what happens when celebrity becomes vulnerability and litigation becomes public punishment. And the chilling final twist? Even if Blake clears her name legally, the damage is already done in a world that only remembers the scandal, not the facts. Redemption becomes impossible. The story has been written. The question is, can she ever rewrite it again? So now we ask, did Blake Lively overplay her hand, or did Justin Baldoni masterfully set a trap and wait for the perfect moment to strike? Is this legal justice or Hollywood chess played in full view of millions? What's clear is that this battle is no longer confined to the courtroom. It's playing out on every screen, in every comment section, and in every trending headline. And if this is just the beginning, what comes next could change celebrity litigation forever. Don't forget to subscribe to Alexan Trend, because the next revelation might be the most explosive. Yet this isn't over, it's only just begun.